Hey y'all, it's Miss G, and it's time for us to talk about 3.4 graphing linear equations in slope-intercept form. So this is part of our Chapter 3 notes. Make sure you got your name on your paper and you get these filled out so that you can turn them in for the notes check at the end of Chapter 3. So let's work through some vocabulary and some formulas that are introduced here in 3.4, and then we'll work through the practice questions. All right? So the x-intercept is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis, and that occurs when y equals 0. So for example, we have this line, and we're seeing that it crosses the x-axis right here, and they're using a to be a variable for the number at which the line crosses the x-axis. And so that is the x-intercept. So we would say, let's say example A equals 2. We would say the x-intercept is 2, which means the line crosses the x-axis at 2. Okay, so if I were to like kind of give myself some points here. All right, so the y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. Occurs when x is 0. Okay, so anytime we're on the y-axis, the coordinate point for the x is 0, and then this b is just a holding spot to say that the y-intercept equals b. All right, and so example, let's say that here in our example, let's say that b was 3. All right, so we would say the y-intercept is 3, just to kind of put some numbers to it. All right, so we are going to take this information here, okay? We should be able to understand that the most important part is when y is 0, that's how we find the x-intercept. And when x is 0, that's when we can find the y-intercept, and we'll use that more a little bit later. But let's go on ahead and figure out what this slope-intercept form is, okay? So it is y equals mx plus b. Okay, and when you look over here, A and B, B is the y-intercept, all right? So that is where it crosses the y-axis, okay? The M, as we've already been learning here in Chapter 3, M stands for slope, and the invisible operator in between M and X is multiplication, okay? So we have y equals mx plus b. Now, this could also be written as y equals b plus mx, all right? So it doesn't matter which order the terms are. It just shows that we have a variable term with x, and then we have a constant term, which is b, okay? So an example of a y equals mx plus b would be y equals 2x plus 1. So if we were to overlay the formula, we'd say y equals mx plus b, and we can see that in the m spot, m equals 2. So our slope equals 2. And in the b spot, we're going to say this number, and then we look to the sign in front, and we would say b equals positive 1. All right? Another example would be y equals negative 3x, and that's it. Okay? So this is that special case where we have a proportional relationship because the invisible plus 0 that you can't see. That's why I'm drawing it in a dotted line, because it's like we can't see it, okay? But if you were to overlay our formula, you'd see y equals mx plus b. And so the slope is still in the same spot. M would equal negative 3, and b equals 0. Okay, and that makes sense because for a proportional relationship, which is this special case where b is 0, it crosses through the origin, and that would make it cross right here. Okay, so let's work through some practice questions to be able to kind of see if we can test out our understanding of the formula. Okay, so I'm going to write right here just so I have it right front and center. Y equals mx plus b. All right. So it says find the slope and y-intercept of the graph of each linear equation. Okay, so here's my equation, and I know that it's an equation of a line, and it wants me to say find m and find b. All right, so if I were to write my y equals mx plus b, it can help me identify that the b right here is that negative 2, okay? And so I would say b equals negative 2. And then when I look here, okay, I can see that this is in the same spot, and I can say -4 is the m. Whenever we use our slope, please do not forget that that can be -4 over the invisible 1, because that helps us with our rise over our run. All right? So if we were to go on ahead and graph this, I know the notes didn't say we had to, but what if we went ahead and practiced graphing it? We have all the information that we need, okay? So we have a point and we have a way to move. So this B right here is -2, and remember, whenever it crosses the y-axis, our x is always 0. So the coordinate point for the y-intercept is 0, -2, which is 0, -2. Then I would use my slope to be able to help me move, okay? So I could say 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. And see how I'm running out of room on my graph? Well, I could always put the negative with the 1. So I could also write this as 4 over -1, which means I would go up 4 and I would go left 1. And that would also keep me on my line, okay? So this is identifying from the equation. That's B, that's M, and then we would use it to be able to plot. If you're looking for the number of steps that you do, notice we plotted B first before we started to move, okay? All right, let's take this next one. This equation says y minus 5 equals 3/2 x. So when I write this and I try to overlay my equation, I say y equals mx plus b, but I already see like this isn't helping me. What is this -5 over here? It's supposed to just say y equals. So we need to actually do some work and solve for y before we are able to figure out what our slope and our y-intercept is. So I'm going to go ahead and bubble and box. So I'm going to go ahead and say y is what I want to solve for. This is my constant, and this has a variable term. And I want to get this diamond all by itself. So I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to solve for y by adding 5 to both sides. So I'd say y equals 3/2 x plus 5. Now it looks a little bit better because I have y all by itself. Now let me try and overlay my formula and see what matches up. Well, it looks like this 3/2 is in the spot for m, so I'd say m equals 3/2, 3 up, 2 over, right? Rise over run. And then it looks like my b matches up with this +5. So this is the slope and the y-intercept of this equation. But I could not do it until I had made it say y equals, because right now that says y minus 5. I can't do it because this is not the y-intercept. The y-intercept is actually +5. So we got to make sure we have everything on the other side of the equal sign from y before we overlay our formula. Okay? All right. Graphing y equals -3x plus 3. And then it says identify the x-intercept. So we have two things. We need to graph the equation, and then we need to tell what the x-intercept is. Okay? So from our equation, y equals -3x plus 3. First question, have we solved for y? Yes, we have. It already says y equals, okay? And there's nothing else to combine on this side. It already has the x term and a constant. So now I'm going to overlay my formula so I can remind myself what's in its place, and I'm going to say slope is -3 and b is 3. Okay? When I graph it though, I want to make sure that I put that slope over 1 so that I don't accidentally only move up, up, up and make a vertical line. Okay? So in order for me to do this, I need to do step number 1, which is to plot the y-intercept. That's what I need to do first. And then my second step will be to move using slope. Okay, so there's two steps here. We don't want to move using slope because then we just move from the origin and that might not be the y-intercept and we don't know what we're doing. So we have to plot our anchor point first. So I come over here and I say, okay, if it crosses at 3, x is 0 on the y-axis and then 3. So 0, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I have to say step 2, I need to move using slope, and I always start from the last point I plotted. So this tells me I'm going to go down 3 to the right 1. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then I'm going to try to draw a straight line. Let's see if I can draw. Oh, that's not straight. Oh, that wasn't that bad. Okay, then I'm going to draw my line through my points, and I'm just going to kind of gut check it. I'm going to say, okay, -3, right, is my slope, and so that's a negative slope line right there. And then it crosses the y-axis at 3, 1, 2, 3 right there. Okay, I think I did it right. I didn't get anything twisted around. So that was the first part of the problem. The second part is identify the x-intercept. So there are 2 ways to do it, okay? So one would be to look at the graph, okay? The second would be to plug 0 into the equation for y, because on the x-axis y is 0. So if we were to look at the graph, we would say that the x-intercept equals 1 and its coordinate point is 1, 0. Okay? Then I would say, okay, well, what if I wanted to plug 0 into the equation? Well, the equation is y equals -3x plus 3, and I'm going to put the 0 right here for y. So I'm going to say 0 equals -3x plus 3. Well, if I want to solve this, I'd say, let me go on ahead and bubble and box my stuff. And I want to get this term all by itself, which means I'm going to take away 3 from both sides, which leaves me with -3 equals -3x. To solve for x, I'm going to divide by -3. I would divide by -3, and that gives me x equals 1. Well, that's what we said the x-intercept was, right there at 1. Okay, so there's 2 ways to do it. First would just to be look at the graph and see where it crosses the x-axis. The other way is to plug it into the equation, which we're going to be doing more of that as we move on in Chapter 3. So it's not a bad idea to start looking at how you can plug in and solve for x. Okay, guys, let's do the last problem here in our notes. Of course, we're going to do lots of in-class practice so that we can practice these skills. Let's see. The cost y in dollars, okay, so is of taking a taxi x miles is given by y equals 2.5x plus 2. Graph the equation, interpret the y-intercept and the slope. So whenever we have word problems, we've been talking about it all the way since I think the section before when we did proportional relationships. I want you to identify what the units are. So this has nothing to do with numbers. I noticed that y is in dollars, x is in miles, and I know that when I do my slope, I know that it's going to have to be y over x, right? Because the change in y over the change in x, which means I'm going to have dollars, because that matches up with the y, over miles. And I'm going to write all this down before I even worry about all the other things, okay? So I haven't even started to really answer the questions yet. I'm just trying to make sure I have my units in order, and I know that when I'm talking slope, I'm talking dollars per mile. Okay, so when it says to graph the equation, I have the equation y equals 2.5x plus 2. So my first question would be, do I need to solve it for y? Nope, I don't. It already says y equals, okay? So I can go ahead and overlay my formula, and I can see that m equals 2.5 and b equals 2, because those numbers match up in the spots. So now it's time for me to graph using this y-intercept and my slope. So we're going to start plotting our point on the y-axis. But before we do that, we need to label what goes where. So this is where my units come in. So over here I said, y was dollars and x is miles. So I know what I'm doing here, okay? So it says that the y-intercept is 2, which means that is the coordinate point 0, 2. So 0, 2. Then my slope is 2.5, which is also 2.5 over 1. And a little trick, if you don't want to have to go up like half spots, you could always multiply the top number and the bottom number by 2, so you could have 5 over 2. So you feel like you have really good whole numbers to move along the grid lines, okay? So you can plot 2.5 over 1, so you'd go 1, 2, a half, and it would be right there. Or you could multiply by 2 to get rid of the fraction, and then you could go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. Do you notice that we're going to all land in the same line, right? So it's okay, whatever you want to do. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. And then I'm going to draw my line. Hopefully it's straight. Oof. All the way through the grid space with an arrow at the end. Pretend like it's straight. And so I've now done the first part of the problem. The second part, it said, please interpret y-intercept and slope. So y-intercept equals b. So we want to know, what does b equals 2 mean? What does this 2 mean? Well, it's $2, okay? So what does the $2 mean? It means that there is a flat fee of $2 to ride the taxi, which means I have gone 0 miles, but by just getting inside the cab, I owe the guy $2, okay, as just the base fee, and then from there I will owe him more based on how many miles I drive. Him or her, sorry. The only taxi drivers I had are guys. Sorry, I'm saying him. Okay, so that's what this means. When we say interpret, that means to define, explain, okay? So now we have the slope. Well, slope equals m, and our m is 2.5, okay? So we want to know, what does 2.5 mean? What does that mean, right? Interpret it. Well, first we got to put some units to it, okay? So 2.5 is our slope, which means it's in dollars per mile. So we would say 2.5 per mile is the cost, right? For every mile, you owe $2.50. So simply by putting the units with our slope, that helps us interpret what it means. Okay? All right, guys, bring your questions to class. We're going to keep practicing more, and I'll see you soon.